What will you do when your money works for you? Welcome to the Tech Girl Financial Podcast with your hosts, Victor and Kim Gaxiola. In the final episode of the Breaking Money Silence series, Victor and Kim moved to the workplace to discuss how to apply the concepts and strategies of Kathleen Burns Kingsbury's book to leverage your strengths for better pay, flexibility, and promotion. From the home office in California, here is Victor and Kim.
Okay, so we are back and we're talking more Breaking Money Silence. This time we're actually taking it to the workplace.
All right, let's go there.
So far, as if you've been following along, we've been doing a series under Breaking Money Silence, which is based on a book by Kathleen Burns Kingsbury. And we actually were focusing initially on the home. So we focused on the couple. The last episode, we focused on kids and aging parents. And so now we're switching gears, and this will be the final episode in this series where we're talking about how do you break money silence when it comes to the workplace, and how do you leverage your strengths for better pay, flexibility, and possible promotion.
That's right. I really can't wait to get into this because I know it's near and dear to the hearts of many of my clients and friends out there in technology.
Well, you know, when it comes to talking about money, we discussed how it is a challenge to talk about money as it relates to the home. Sometimes you have trouble talking, to people, especially like your spouse or your kids or aging parents. And that's been the theme for previous. But when it comes to working, talking about it in the workplace, there's so many other layers that come with it. So it's talking to your fellow employees as it relates to pay and benefits. And then also if you're changing jobs or if you have a relationship, with your boss, how do you go about asking for a raise or a promotion? Or if you're seeking a new job, how do you go and secure, you get to that difficult conversation where you've got a great prospect on a great job and everything looks good. And then it comes time to talking about money, and how do you negotiate a better salary?
Right. And this one's really tricky, I think, because this is really personal. It's going to force you to look inside yourself and delve up all of those money scripts that have to do with you and your self-worth and your working styles, your capabilities, what you've done, as well as what you're capable of doing. So it may draw a lot of insecurities to the top of your, awareness. And it's about really kind of coming to terms with them, gaining confidence, and then being able to use that confidence to help you gain more at work.
And I think confidence really plays a lot into this because when we were having a conversation about this earlier today, one of the things that kept coming up was the differences between men and women, even when it comes to seeking out the same job. So you can have a job opening at a place and have all the skills required for the job. You read the job description, it sounds really good. But as we were discussing, I think men are more apt to, let's say if they read a job description, there's only like 5 or 6 things that they're looking for. If a guy has half of those or more than half, he will still apply for the job. Whereas I think women won't. And I'm not putting myself out there. I think that statistically that's the case, or maybe it's more of a feeling.
That's the case. We're so literal. We're going to read that job description and we want to check off all the boxes. We want to be confident that we're going to be the right person for this job and that we can do it all.
Yeah, and I think guys are more like fake it until we make it. When it comes to, I've applied for jobs where I'm reading through the job description and I say, yeah, I can do that. I'm actually pretty good at that. Yes. I don't know this as much, but guess what? Get me in the door and I'm going to learn it. I'll learn it. I'll wing it. I'll figure it out.
That's right. And I think this is really important because, who goes into a job without thinking they're going to grow and challenge themselves? Mm-hmm. And so I encourage women when they're looking at those job applications and they're looking at those requirements is, again, if you have just half of them or a little 2/3 or something, go for it. You are seeking a new job opportunity because you want growth in your career. And that's going to come with a little bit of pain and uncomfortable feelings. But once you do it, you'll be so proud. I'm just remembering that first job step up I took. Mm-hmm. It was my second job after graduating from college. And the interviewee said to me, what makes you think you can go out and speak in front of a room full of people twice your age? And to be honest, I had never done public speaking, and this job required me to be out there speaking in public. I knew I really wanted to get good at that, and I knew with my strong work ethic that if I was placed in that situation, I would grow into it, and so I threw myself out. But I was really kind of scared because I had no clue whether I could be a good public speaker or not. And so, it was interesting because it was a really funny and relevant question to me, and I just said, I know this stuff better than anyone I'll be talking to. And since I have the material and I'm confident about it, I can look anyone straight in the eye and tell them the answers to their questions and be confident in those answers. And I think that probably was what got me the job, because I was like 24 at the time. And I was going to be a 401k enroller talking about investments and their 401k plans.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of funny.
It actually reminds me of two things, and it goes to show a little bit about your character, especially set at a very young age. And this is going back to like our kids, and specifically Mika. We would often tell her, if you don't ask the question, the answer is no, right? So you need to put yourself out there, and it goes back to confidence. It also reminds me of a story when I was going through the training program at A.G. Edwards, and I was sharing with you that there was about 70 trainees, and I think a good 1/3 of the people were either fresh out of college or maybe this was their second job, but they had only really been, in experience-wise, maybe a year or two. And I remember, the other 2/3 were people who were second careers, much like myself, sitting through the training. And I remember towards the tail end of the training that one of the young advisors, he must have been about 22, 23 years of age, but he looked 18, and he raised his hand, and he asked the instructors the question. He said, how am I going to be able to do this business? Because I don't have the experience doing this business. How will a senior or baby boomer be able to look at me across the table and feel that I have any real value to add, any real experience to base my decisions on? And the instructors, I know this was not the first time that they had been asked this question, because they answered it perfectly. And they said, look, based on the training that we've given you, based on the information that you've learned to pass the test necessary for you to have the license and credential, you right now at this point know more than about 90 to 95% of the general public when it comes to making investments and investment advice. You sitting on the other side of that table makes you an expert. So go out and own it. And it really, it gave him the confidence that he was looking for. And he was absolutely right. All of us collectively, if we were second guessing ourselves and our abilities to be able to help people make decisions around money, felt completely different after that, because it was right. It was true. We on the other side now, even in our own perception and our own mind, have the confidence to go forward in helping people out.
Right. And I always tell people too, because, I've been in this business for so long, and every now and then there still is a question that will stump me. And people are honestly okay if you tell them you don't know the answer to that question, as long as you find the right information and you be resourceful and get back to them in a reasonable amount of time. And I would, far be it better to come back with a response as opposed to respond at that time, because, it's only a guess. And if you respond with a guess, people know you're guessing.
Right.
And it goes back to that confidence. If you're not showing confidence, and that will come through and through.
And, it's so true. And I'll add an additional perspective, because in my previous role, I had the opportunity to actually hire people. So I had positions that were available. And I remember that when we were working through the job description, and keep this in mind, especially if you're looking for work, when we wrote the job description, we sat down and we wrote a job description that basically listed, I would say, the most ideal candidate would have all of the following. And maybe we listed 6 to 8 things that we were looking for. Honestly, we would have been happy if a candidate came that could do at least 2/3 of those. Not all of them.
Right.
2/3 was good enough.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And because we thought to ourselves, it's very unlikely we're going to find a candidate that can meet all of these criteria. But if we can find someone that has most, they'll put them in a competitive space. And so when we were doing the interviews, we were looking for, okay, what parts is this person missing? And there were some areas where we said, you would prioritize out of the 6 to 8 things you're looking for. Half of them are really important. Those are critical. But the others were nice to haves. And so we were looking, does this person have the critical core competencies that we're looking for? And how many of the nice to haves do they check off? And so that was where we were looking for that attitude and that confidence. And we had applicants that would say, I'm not so strong here, but I'm willing to learn. And that to me meant more than someone trying to just like wing it or trying to like fake it, you know.
Absolutely.
And we could smell that out.
I mean, it's true. If you are wavering and you're uncertain about the position, then it will come out in your voice. It's so interesting how that happens. So, research. If there are skills or things about the job that you don't have, you better be researching it so that you have enough information to be able to come off confident. That's critical.
Well, and the impact, if you want to look at it from a financial standpoint, especially when talking about women, is, in Kathleen's book, she lists a couple of statistics, and this is from the National Bureau of Economic Research that said that the impact of women's incomes is startling. He says, just 1 year out of college, a woman who's working full-time earns 82% of what a college-educated man makes at the same point in their career. Now, that's staggering, 82%. We've heard 67%, but in this case, they're saying 82% of what a college-educated man makes at the same point of his career. But by the time a woman reaches the age of 60, the failure to negotiate salary can cost her up to $500,000 over a lifetime. Now, that, as she lists here, is a steep penalty for the money silence.
Right, and there's so much that goes along with that, because I'm just thinking of that person that graduated from college and then has a career and then maybe steps back for a couple years because she's having kids and they're young and she doesn't want a lot of responsibility. So you pull back or quit entirely, and then you go back to the workforce, but maybe family things come up and you pull back and you get back in. And it's really difficult throughout your lifetime to keep up with the boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about the boys, because one of the other stats here, and this is from Small Business Trends, is that one of the major contributors, and this is what we talk about, this persistent gender wage gap that exists in the U.S., is that women are a lot less likely to engage in salary negotiations than men are. We've talked about this. In fact, men are 9 times more likely to ask for more money, 8 times more likely to negotiate a salary offer, and 4 times more likely to negotiate their initial salaries.
So that's really interesting, those statistics. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets me into thinking about numbers and metrics, which I love. Because,
you love the numbers.
Yeah. You want to be able to measure things in order to prove your worth, because I think in the end, when somebody is hiring you, it's all about what's in it for me, right? And so, you have to be able to prove that your self-worth at any level. And, you're in a competition with somebody else. Are you as productive as that other person is? And if so, then you should be paid the same. Mm-hmm. But, let's just realize that all things are not always equal.
Right.
And so it's really important to be able to measure what you're doing, what you're capable of, and your productivity in order to be asking for what you really deserve.
Right. And I think a lot of it depends on the role too, right? Going back to when I said we were hiring, I didn't care if it was a male or a female. Does this person meet the job description? Can they do the work, right? Can they come with confidence and add value to the team? Is it going to be a good fit, male or female, right? But when I talk about the role, is if you are looking for a sales role, if you're looking for a role where negotiation is part of the job, I always felt, I want this job. Thank you for the salary offer, but I would counter. Even if I didn't need the counter, it's just I need to let them know what they're dealing with, because that's how I'm going to negotiate if I'm representing this brand or this company.
Yeah.
Right. So it depends on the role.
It does. And I remember that. You telling me that a long time ago when I was negotiating for things. And I'll tell you, that was probably the most empowering experience and that I've had was when they came back a couple times. They came back with the offer and you're telling me, you got to ask for more. They're prepared that you may negotiate. And that's why you always have to ask for more. And so I did. And what was the worst that could happen? I mean, I think realistically, nobody's going to take away that offer just because you asked for more. They're just going to tell you no, they can't.
Right.
Okay, so all of this is well and good for those that are hired as an employee of a company. But I'd like to also discuss, because some of our clients and people that we know also own their own business.
Right.
So those women-owned businesses. And I think where they can relate to this is, I have a feeling that a lot of them are discounting their service to get business.
What do you mean by discounting their service? Like charging less?
Yeah,
or?
Charging less
Really?
than they're probably worth. Because us women have a tendency of, being nurturers, helping people out. And in doing that, sometimes we discredit ourselves for the benefit of somebody else. And I have heard from women business owners that they probably could be charging more for their consulting fees or whatever it is that they're doing. And, if you're a real estate agent, maybe you discount the commission or what have you. And a lot of that still stems from a place of, uncertainty or insecurity. And talking about why you're worth the full commission or, the full consulting fee.
Okay.
And for women-owned businesses, it's also tough for them to ask for money from banks.
Oh, yeah.
And, if they want to get venture capital money, it's very tough to get that from the venture capitalists. The statistics are staggering out there and not on the good side.
I actually have those stats, and they were in the book, Breaking Money Silence, that between the years of 2010 and 2015, only 10% of venture capital dollars globally went to fund startups with a female founder, meaning that 90% of all venture capital went to men. That's a lot. That's a lot of money going to men.
Right.
And then the other thing, too, is that women-owned businesses are funded at a lower rate than those run by men, with loan approval rates for women-owned small businesses are 33% lower than they were for male-owned enterprises. So two staggering stats.
It is, and I think that they're looked at very critically in the eyes of venture capitalists. I watch Shark Tank, and I see it there.
You do watch Shark Tank.
That they're looking to find out when it's a woman up there standing up doing her pitch. They're looking to find out if you're a hobbyist or if you're a real serious businesswoman.
Right. Well,
and so I think you have to be aware of that as a woman and come in strong as an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, know all your numbers and be able to ask for the same.
So by hobbyist, you mean someone who's just doing it for fun, right? As opposed to really doing it to bring home some real income.
Yeah, there's those people that are looking. I mean, it'd be nice for them to make good money in this business, but they don't maybe need it because they have a spouse that's bringing in a decent level of income. And this is, just something they're doing to keep busy while being flexible for their kids.
So very special considerations when it comes to small business owners as it relates to how they're managing their business and how they're evaluating their business and how they present it as well.
Right. You still have to be selling that business. You're pitching it. What is in it for the person that's going to be funding it, either the small bank or the venture capitalist? Be confident, know your numbers, and know why you're going to kick it out of the ballpark.
So those of you who may be looking for work or looking for a promotion, I mean, right now, most of the conversation has been surrounding like monetary compensation. But one of the beautiful things is that the workplace is changing. And there are many other things that you can be asking for that will improve your lifestyle. And so we're talking about the flexibility that can come with, flexible hours, working from home, being around more, working kind of staggered hours, getting commuter benefits. I mean, what else can you think of? Travel and reimbursements.
Vacation, car allowance. I mean, there are so many creative things that you can use to your benefit that will help you in getting to a place that you feel comfortable with.
Right. So, I mean, what I'm saying is for some people, that flexibility may mean more than an additional, numbers or zeros or tens or whatever it is to the paycheck, from the standpoint that if it means that you can be home, or in my case, one of the things I love about what I do today is that I can manage, our son's baseball team that have the flexibility to do that.
Right. And, I'm reminded that there are so many more tools out there today than there were back when I was looking for a job. And, there's Glassdoor out there. And I mean, we can go online and just say, what is a software engineer making at level 1, level 5, or what have you. And we can see what that is for our community. We can look at it in specific companies. Do your due diligence. Know that just ask Google. Google will tell you.
Google knows everything. Google does know everything. And you bring out a great point, because Glassdoor is one that I started using, especially when you're looking for work. And if you haven't already gone to Glassdoor.com, it's great, because even if you get down to the minutia of a specific job or a specific company, you can see reviews on the company and you get a sense of what they are paying for the role that you're looking for, a role similar to it in different market areas. So if you're like a software developer, what you can get in San Francisco is very different than what you'd get if you're in Omaha, or if you're in Austin, or if you're in Miami or New York or Chicago, because different markets are going to have different supplies and demand, right? So an engineer, let's say in the Bay Area, may be at much higher demand. And so with that, the salary is going to be much more competitive. The benefits are going to be more competitive. I mean, I got to tell you, I loved when I was working at Hearsay. Those free meals were awesome, And I talked to other people who would work in similar companies in different locations, and they would just be jealous of the fact that we had these free meals. But it's par for the course here.
Right. So when we go back to the idea of doing your research, talk to your peers. Break money silence. This is what this is all about.
Break it.
And break money silence.
Join the revolution.
Yeah, I would say you can preface it and say, hey, I know this is an uncomfortable topic to be discussing, but, what are you making or what have you? And I know that sounds absolutely awkward, and HR will say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. But why are they saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that? I think on the flip side, you have to be prepared if somebody is in the same position as you and they're making more than you. You also have to be prepared for that and to understand, what's making them worth more than you. Because I don't think everybody at the same level should get paid the same. I think it still should be based on your productivity.
Productivity, performance, and experience. I think experience is the big thing. And I was sharing with you that at one point I worked at this job where they had this intern who came in and she was disappointed that she wasn't getting the top responsibilities. Is like, you're an intern, you get the grunt work, at least for now, right? But this is all part of the experience. Your compensation is that experience. It's going to make you much more employable in the future, right? So I do think that having that conversation with your peers, and sometimes it's not so much fishing for an actual amount. Like, you wouldn't be sitting there and saying, well, how much do you make? Give a range. Do you make between this and this, or this is what I was shooting for? Am I asking for too much? Am I asking not enough? Because going back again, when we were looking for this position to fill, we had a range of salaries, and we thought if the person comes back with a counter that falls within this range, we're good. And there was a low end and a high end. And so we had flexibility in what we were willing to give out.
Right. And I think, at this point, I do want to bring up that movie that I was watching last night, Hidden Figures, because those women are truly my heroes. That's the movie about the African-American women who were really the first, trailblazers for women in tech. And they were mathematicians, they were engineers, they were smart women with a passion for what they did. And they were so respectful in a time that was really,
challenging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be a woman at NASA is, number one, rare at that time. And to have the jobs that they were having, they were women amongst, one woman amongst a room full of 15 men, and then to be African American as well. And I mean, man, they're my heroes. They just rose above it with respect, and it all had to do with their clear capabilities. They were really good at what they did. And as long as you're really good at what you do, I think eventually the opportunity comes. I mean, I don't know if I'm just opportunistic or what, but I do believe that people see your competence.
I agree completely. They say cream rises to the top. In this particular case, it was in the state of Virginia in a very trying time in our history. And yet, despite the obstacles that were placed before them, and there were plenty, the fact that they were able to kind of pick themselves and recognize the obstacles, but then take the actions necessary to be able to overcome them is really what makes that movie so inspirational.
Right. And the fact is, they had a lot to complain about. And even the one woman who became an engineer, even her husband was almost like pulling her back down, and she rose above it. And she did what she had to do, ignored all the negative commentary, and just believed in herself, and just so beautifully got what she wanted.
And what I loved about the movie is all of those and the themes, associated with them overcoming these challenges. But a couple of things too is, now we're doing a movie review. They didn't do these overnight. Like, they didn't overcome these challenges overnight. They knew it was going to be a process, that it was going to take a while before they were going to be able to change minds. But it was really their talent. You couldn't ignore their talent. When the engineer's up and or the mathematician, as she's writing on the chalkboard, and they're saying, who did that? And they point to her, and like, everybody can't believe she did that, and then they started respecting her. Even the character played by Kevin Costner respected her, to the point where John Glenn would not launch, without the mathematician checking the numbers. Right. Right. So it was an outstanding movie.
Right. I think that, there is just no room for negativity. And so when you're looking at this and reflecting upon your own career and things, it is so easy to get down and discouraged. But think of all the positive things you've got going for you, know what they are, and be able to explain them.
So the characters in the movie, which were Katherine Johnson, who is the mathematician, Dorothy Vaughan, who was played by Octavia Spencer, she's the one that learned Fortran, right? So she in her case, she was a computer. And when they brought in the big IBM mainframes in, she said, well, we're going to be replaced. And she goes to the library and gets the book and learns how Fortran, because she recognizes, I need to understand this language in order to improve. And then Janelle Monáe, who played Mary Jackson, who was the engineer, a great scene there is when she's talking to the Polish Jewish immigrant, right? Who says, look, if I can overcome this and be in a room where we're launching the spacecraft into space, why couldn't you? That relatability of the fact that we're both kind of marginalized individuals, me from my heritage and also my background, you from your heritage and background, but we can overcome this together. I thought that was very inspirational too.
Right, that was. I just get chills thinking about that movie, because those women are definitely my heroes.
Yeah, and the other thing too, going back, and the one thing that I really liked about the movie as well is that they show their kids witnessing this happening too. So you think about the strength that they were able to pass on to the next generation, so that the little girls, in the case of Katherine Johnson, or the boys, Octavia Spencer's character's boys, seeing these strong women role models in their own household and saying, why couldn't they excel as well? Because they had great role models. So great movie all around. Hidden Figures. It seems to be very inspirational to you, and it actually speaks to the original women in tech. So we love serving this market.
Right. So I think it all comes back to your mindset and your money scripts when it has to do with work. So when you think about how do you feel about money and work, or money and self-worth, really think about those answers. And remember, if you're getting a negative answer from that question the answer that you have, because your money scripts are only partially truth. And some of them are not. And some of those negative scripts are holding you back.
It's true. And when it comes to the money talk guidelines that we've discussed in previous episodes and podcasts, when it comes to breaking money silence, some of the things that are a little bit different in these conversations that you're having with a boss or a supervisor or a manager, or let's say a hiring manager in that case, is that unlike family, you may not necessarily have the same money scripts or shared values, right? So that's where I think the confidence comes in, and basically knowing exactly what your values are, what matters to you, what your money scripts are, and being able to share that. So how would you, Kim, recommend, when it comes to money talk guidelines, how would you go about, the timing, the approach that you would take? Let me put you in a situation. You're due for a promotion. You know you deserve a promotion. How would you approach your boss or supervisor to have that conversation?
Well, I would be open and transparent with them, tell them that I am interested in this promotion and what are they looking for that role? And what do you think I need? What skills do I need to acquire in order to put me in position for that role? Because I think first and foremost, you need to know what your money scripts are, but you also actually need to know what your manager's money scripts are and beliefs about what's important for this role. And so flat out ask them. You're not a mind reader.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also to an understanding of what their value systems are as it relates to the company itself. Like how proactive are they in wanting to see growth in the company? Because I think that kind of conversation, when it says, let me approach this conversation for this promotion or for a role, or because I'm in a position where I can take on some additional responsibility, is the common goal is what's good for the company and ultimately what's good for the customer. And I think no one will ever fault you in wanting to do more of both.
Right. But it also goes back to the fact that if your manager comes in there and tells you the person that we are looking for this job has da 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 da, and you come back and have those, how can that manager say no to you?
Right. Right. And if they do, maybe it's time to move on.
Right.
Jump ship. Keep going.
So, it'll be worthwhile for a couple reasons. One is either you get the job because you asked for it and they said yes. But if you don't get it, it may be worthwhile for you to understand maybe, he's pulling my leg and maybe I'm just never going to be right for in the eyes of that manager. And then you do go look for something else.
Absolutely. And I think the timing is important, ensuring that the conversation is one that is done in private. Wouldn't do it in a team meeting.
Right.
Start
and
asking a bunch of questions.
I think there's also something about coming from negotiation from a place of strength. And this is where I love to bring in the financial topics, is that if you are comfortable where you are financially and you're not hungry for that next opportunity, even if you really want it, but come from a position of strength. Like, I have a good thing going on right now and I can take care of myself. Even if I end up losing this job, I have enough for at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Come always from a position of financial strength, because you are so much better able to negotiate and you will have more confidence if you can know that you can walk away.
So to recap, the Breaking Money Silence series has been really an exercise in focusing on how we as individuals or as couples or with our kids and aging parents and now the workplace can have what is typically a very challenging or difficult conversation, but giving you the confidence and the strength and some of the tactics so that you can start having the conversation to break through and join the revolution. So we're hoping that you've learned something through this. I know we've learned something through this, just in our own conversations at home and also your conversations with clients.
Right. And I would just, again, reiterate that it is going to be uncomfortable at first. Practice, practice, practice. Do it in front of the mirror. Ask these questions that you want to ask your peers or your manager or anyone. Practice them first, and then it'll flow better when you actually are doing it for real. Because it is going to be uncomfortable at first, and you just have to accept that, because in that discomfort, you're growing.
Absolutely. And we will continue being a resource. This will probably not be the last you'll hear of Breaking Money Silence, because we are going to continue doing the retreats, possibly doing some webinars in the future. So if you have questions, comments, or just curious, reach out to us. You can reach out to us by going to our contact us page on our website, or you can also hit us up on Twitter. Just use hashtag AskTGF. Okay, so now that we have the whole Breaking Money Silence behind us, what's coming up? So coming up is an area that I'm really excited about. It's something that Kim has worked on and developed, and it just happens to be very appropriate because we're approaching tax season, or we are deep in the middle of tax season. But in addition to that, the whole Con Marie, the whole Netflix special that you love, right? About getting organized and sparking joy. So we're going to do that.
We are. Hard to believe you can spark joy with your finances, but we're going to find a way.
Yes, we can. So the next focus for us is going to be getting financially organized, or KonMari, your finances. I hope I'm saying that right.
You are.
Okay, good. So if you're familiar with the Netflix show about sparking joy, we are going to find a way to spark joy on how you get yourself organized so that you know what you have and you know how to manage it. So look forward to that episode coming up next. But once again, I'm Victor Gaxiola.
And I'm Kim Gaxiola.
And remember, what will you do when your money works for you? Thanks for joining us.
If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future shows, please send an email to victor@techgirlfinancial.com or join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag AskTGF. We also encourage you to follow us on the Tech Girl Financial page on Facebook and connect with us on LinkedIn.
Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Tech Girl Financial and Cambridge Investment Research, Inc. are not affiliated companies.